Contrary to popular belief, winter is one of the best times to get out and go fishing. You can have some amazing opportunities at schooling redfish, some really big trout, and tons of other species. So in this video, I wanted to cover a question that I got from one of our Salt Strong insiders about how to not pick dead zones in the winter. And believe it or not, that can be a bit of an issue. Like I said, there is some great opportunities in winter, but if you're not picking the right spots, you can go out and have a very bad day of fishing because the 90-10 rule is most glaringly in effect in wintertime, and that's when 90% of the feeding fish are in 10% of the water that you're fishing. So it's very important that we avoid those dead zones where the fish are not, because the high winds, low temperatures, and generally lower tides that we see in wintertime really force them into specific zones. And there's a couple really key factors that I want to highlight for you guys in this video today to help you dodge out these dead zones. Now, to jump right into it, one of the first things we're going to take a look at is wind. And if you guys see here on this chart, all of these light wisps indicate which direction the wind is blowing, and wind direction is absolutely key in the wintertime. It's going to tell you guys exactly where fish are going to hold, because as that wind rolls over the surface of the water, it's going to cool the water below it, especially when we're fishing inshore for shallow running species like redfish and speckled trout, snook as well. That wind over 3 foot of water is going to really cool down the area that is below it. So you need to make sure that you're picking areas that have wind protection. Now, one thing we're going to see in the wintertime is that most areas are going to have a north wind or a northeast wind when a heavy cold front blows through, and this is where we can really predict where fish are going to hold, because it's most likely going to be on a northern protected shoreline. So to show you guys what that's going to look like, we've got some northeast winds over here in the Texas region, over in the Panhandle and Alabama region of Florida. We've got some northeast. It's more northeast instead of just a straight northeast wind like we got over here in Texas. Looking over at Georgia and South Carolina, this is northwest. More so a northwest wind straight over here in North Carolina, getting into Virginia. So we see a lot of heavy north winds, as you guys can see. So predicting where in your area you're going to have protection from that northwest or northeast or north wind is going to be very important. Now, to take a quick look at what that might look like, let's go ahead and take a look at this region over here. So for example, against this sand beach area, so let's take Austin Bayou. Now, a great thing to go look for is areas like this that are protected from north winds on the coastline. The area that I zoomed in Florida has protection from that north wind, but these are the same principles that I use when I'm fishing in Texas, the Carolinas, doesn't matter. So you guys can see here, we've got this nice marsh that's gonna have a lot of bait flowing out of it. Really good area that's a little bit further away from the passes and inlets in wintertime. But as that north wind rolls through, the fish that are on the south side of this Blunts Bay area are going to move to where it's more protected. So you're going to see them hugging this shoreline up over here, maybe hiding amongst some of these little docks or outside of these feeder creeks, or even against this point right over here. Now, another really cool thing about these north wind protections is that you know that fish are going to put themselves in an area that bait is going to be constantly given to them by the conditions, whether that be tide, wind, just the overall setup of the area that it is you're fishing. So the north wind, as bait comes out of this marsh, is going to be pushed around this point. And the same deal here with all these little feeder creeks and things of that nature. As that north wind blows, it's going to push water out of those marshes. That's again why we end up with a lot of lower tides in winter, because it forces all that water south down the coastline. So you generally end up with a foot or two less of water than you normally have in other seasons of the year. So if I was going to fish this area, the zones I would be most interested in would probably be this point right here, as there is good wind protection from a north wind that would be blowing against the shoreline right here. Fish could stage and be protected, and also wait for that wind as that bait is pushed out of this marsh by that north wind tide. It's going to funnel around this point. You're going to see a lot of fish holding in this area, as well as maybe some of these little creek mouths right here. So that's just an example of how I would pick a zone based on the wind. You guys can see here again, those wisps are indicating that kind of northeast wind right over here. So that would be a really good indicator of, wanting to find those zones that have north wind protection. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is depth changes, and a really awesome tool and feature. Again, this is the Smart Fishing Spot Spots app that we have over at Salt Strong. Would highly recommend using it, especially when you're planning winter fishing trips. It's got all the tools you need, as you guys are going to see later on in the video. But one of the big things that I use is the marine chart, because it allows me to see what the depths are in those areas really quickly and easily. So I'm going to go take a look at one of my favorite areas to fish in the wintertime over in Texas. And that is the outsides of some of these big marshes and flats. So you can see this big, nice open flat right here. It's kind of a textbook area that we talk about here in Texas. We've got these big open flats that border these nice intercoastal channels. What I like to do is find, again, a northern wind protected area and then combine that with a really nice depth change. So we'll take this Hog Island zone, for example. I can see that there's a channel over here, but again, I'm looking for somewhere that drops off, 5 to 10 foot at a minimum. So what I'll use over here, if I hit this nice marine chart tool, is that I can now see, okay, we've got a nice little channel coming off. I'm going to actually tune this down so you guys can see it a little bit better. But you see we've got the northern wind protection from Hog Island right here, and at 8, 7, a nice channel, 6 foot, good hole right here, right next to this Oyster Bar area. This is, again, going to be another important part of picking winter spots. But we've got northern wind protection now close to some of these deeper channels that fish can get down into if it snaps really cold fast. They do want to try and hunt in as shallow water as they can. Fish like redfish are really designed to hunt in just about a foot of water. They've got very powerful tails. Their mouths are on the bottom of their jaw. That way that they can quickly, get onto some bait that's up in shallow water. They're designed to feed in the shallowest water possible. So if they can, they're going to get up and feed on these shorelines of, say, Hog Island over here, on top of some of these bars that we see close by. But they need to be able to retreat to deeper water. That way, when that cold snap happens, they are able to get down and preserve themselves after that cold front hits, and they can kind of last it out until it gets warm again. That's a big thing that we're going to see fish do, is just kind of pick these areas based on where they can feed during the warm parts of winter and where they can hold and be safe during the cooler parts of winter, because not every day is blistering cold, but they need to be prepared for those days as well, being that they are cold-blooded and they don't have the opportunity to put on jackets like we do. So again, I'm going to pick these areas that have these nice depth changes where fish can get down and kind of protect themselves from these really cold temperatures. So again, north wind, we've got these deep channels right here. This would be a good spot to fish in wintertime because it's got now 2 factors. A northern wind protection is great, say if there's one of those nice points that I pointed out in the last spot, but combining a northern wind protection with a really good depth change, there's very likely going to be fish here in the wintertime. I can tell you I've fished this area, there definitely are. But again, combining structure and several warmth factors are going to be a big key to finding fish. So one other big factor here that I want to highlight is oyster bars, because they act almost as space heaters for fish in the wintertime, and they're one of the best indicators that the area that you're going to fish is not going to be a dead zone, because there's going to be bait, there's going to be warmth, and very good chance there's going to be good depth changes nearby, because oysters are going to only grow in areas that there's good current flow. So I want to use this area over here as an example. If you give me 1 second to zoom in on it, it's one of the areas I used to fish a lot when I was in the Carolinas, and it is this zone right over here. I filmed a ton of reports. This flat is actually filled with oysters. As you guys can see, I'm going to hit this oyster bar tool. You can see all these little gray spots are oysters. So what this tool does is it highlights data that has been given to us by the government over in South Carolina, whatever state that you're in. If you hit that oyster bar tool, it's going to highlight from survey data where oyster bars are. Really helpful if you don't know how to read satellite maps. Again, this is Smart Fishing Spots. If you guys have not seen this tool before, it's incredible. Everything I've been showing you guys today has been on Smart Fishing Spots, but this is one of my favorite tools for wintertime, is to use this oyster bar function. Now, one big thing I want you guys to pay attention to is where these oyster bars end up. We can see everywhere that all these current channels enter the flat, you end up with a big conglomeration of oyster bars. Now, the reason for that is oyster bars grow in current, but that tells us that the fish now have somewhere to duck into, as I mentioned, with depth changes when it is a lower tide or there's higher winds, or it's just an area that they don't want to really be and feed, and they're just looking to kind of preserve themselves during a front. Now, say that front passes and it's now kind of the warmer days following one of those really heavy cold fronts, where are the fish going to be feeding? Well, they're going to be in that same area that they were holding and preserving, but the best zones that you're going to find fish after those days are where they can get up shallow and feed but still stay warm. Now, what's cool about oyster bars is they function almost like space heaters for these fish, because what's going to happen is that sun is going to beat down on these oyster rocks and it's going to warm them up, almost like, you know, if you go outside after it's been a really sunny day and you've got a lot of warmth on the sidewalk that's concrete. You put your foot on that concrete and you can feel how warm it is. The oyster bars do the same thing. They're dark colored shells, they hold that heat. It's hard structure that these fish are going to kind of sit close to, and if you were to take a thermometer and read the temperature next to oyster bars and then go out to the channel where there is no oyster bars nearby, that water is not going to be as warm. In fact, I found many fish that after a cold front, when they're up in the shallows, their noses and their bellies will be red because they've been rubbing against oyster shell or rocks, and this tool is going to help you find those areas that fish are going to be holding very tight to, looking for easy meals, because bait is going to congregate around these oyster bars as well. In the wintertime, we see a lot of shrimp that hold next to these oyster bars, and it's really important that you look for areas that, again, fish are able to get easy meals. They're able to, you know, be close to those depth changes. If you look again, this flat over here has some nice north wind protection, northeast wind protection over here. In fact, when I did fish this area, I favored a lot of these bars here and here. Didn't tend to fish over in this zone, but being that these fish could jump out of this depth change right here, get to these oyster bars, they could get out of this depth change, go over here, be protected on a north wind. Just a perfect area to go out and go fishing. But again, what we're looking for is several factors of warmth where fish can hold, easily get meals, and then have an area to go be in preservation mode if those fronts come through and they need to kind of duck down into deeper water. So north wind, some depth changes, and oyster bars. Very important pieces of picking a really good spot for fishing in the wintertime, avoiding those dead zones. Again, I would highly recommend, if you are looking to plan a really good winter fishing trip, you use smart fishing spots. For those of you who are watching that are not Salt Strong Insiders, I would highly recommend that you join the Insider Club, because this comes free with your membership and it is one of the most critical tools to making sure that you go out and have a good day of fishing. Yes, you can get on satellite maps and look for all this stuff, but the oyster bar function, the depth chart, all of that stuff, really helpful in just making planning really quick and easy. And we also do have the Smart Fishing Spots locator app that'll actually tell you the spots that have the best chance in the wintertime to go and catch a bunch of fish. In fact, if I hit it right over here, let's see where, wow, look at that. So all the good areas to go fish, north wind protection, depth channels, all these areas over here, that'll be fair fishing on these days. But again, as you go through different days of fishing, that kind of grader will change depending on what the conditions are. So if I continue to scroll through at, let's say, 10 a.m., 9 a.m., we can see it gets a little bit better on this shoreline because there's some more northern wind protection. This is all, again, if you don't want to go through and kind of pick the spots yourself. If you just want to hit the Smart Spots function, it'll tell you exactly where the best spot is going to be, and probably there's a front rolling through with some heavy north winds, and it would indicate that that's going to be the best spot to go fish. That's probably where I would have gone fishing if not in this channel right here. So it's a really easy way to kind of also test yourself if you're picking the right spots. If you are picking all these warmth factors, all that stuff is going to kind of key into where those fish are going to be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you picked up some really good tips. Again, if you're not a Salt String Insider, highly recommend you jump in and get access to the Smart Fishing Spots tool. It's really going to help you pick some better areas to get onto fish in the wintertime. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. And if you're new to Salt Strong, just know we're the #1 online fishing club out there, because we actually guarantee we're going to help you catch more fish with our courses and tips, plus our new Smart Fishing Spots app that actually tells you where fish are going to be feeding throughout the day, and it follows them as they move. We'll also help you save tons of money on tackle, and you're going to make a ton of new fishing friends fast, or it's free. So thank you again so much for watching, and we're looking forward to seeing you in the Insider family soon.